Hello everyone, and welcome to the 8th episode of Coherent Coder. In this episode, we are going to be looking at if and if else statements. So, let's roll that intro. If statement. If statement is a control statement with which you can execute or ignore a bunch of code depending on a condition. Okay, so if you look at the syntax, you will see that first we have to write if, which is the keyword for if statement, and then you give a space and then you open brackets, and inside the brackets you provide a condition depending on which the statements inside the flower brackets, which are after the if condition, get executed. So let's say that you want the statements to be executed only when the value of variable x is equal to 2. Okay, so how we will write it? So we will first write if, and then we will give a space, and then in brackets we will write x equal to 2, and then after that we will close that bracket, and then we will open flower brackets in the next line. And inside this, whatever lines of code that you write, that those lines of code will only get executed when the value of x is 2. In all the other cases, that execution will be skipped. So let's see how we use if statement with a real world example. Okay, so let's imagine that someone comes to you and asks, do you want tea? Okay, so your answer would be either yes or no, right? So if you say yes, that person will either serve you the tea that's already been made, or he will prepare the tea and he will serve you, right? But if you say no, then that person will not do anything else for you and he will just keep on doing what he was doing earlier. So in a similar way, if condition also works. So with if condition, only when the given condition is true, the statements will get executed. Otherwise, the execution will go on as normal. Nothing special would happen, right? Everything that's happening will be something which is very normal. Only the control statements create an abnormality in the flow of execution. Okay, so now let's move on and look at if-else statement. If-else statement is a control statement which is very similar to the if statement, but it has an additional else part to it. So if we look at the syntax, the first part is same as the syntax for the if statement. That is because if-else statement is just an that is because if-else statement is just an extension of if statement. Okay, so it just has an additional functionality over the if statement. So in if statement, we learned that whenever the condition that is passed is true, something would happen. And if that condition is false, then the execution flow will go on as normal, right? But with if-else statement, we add an additional condition for the false part also. So for example, let's assume that the condition that is being passed to the if statement is false. In that case, it will not just go on and execute all the other code. It will come to the else part. That means whatever statements or whatever lines of code that are written under the else statement, those will be executed. And this is the one major difference between if and if else statement. Okay. So let's understand this with a real world example. For example, let's assume that someone comes to you and asks, do you want to eat now? Okay. So if someone comes and asks you that, then your answer would be either yes or no. Okay. But let's say that you say that you do not want to eat now. That does not mean that you are not going to eat at all. Right? That only means that you will eat later. Right? These sort of scenarios are best represented with the if else statement. So if you look at the example, when do you want to eat now is zero. That means when you are saying that you are not going to eat now, it will first check the condition. So the condition is that do you want to eat now should be one. That means it should be true. But here we are passing the value of zero. That means it is false. So since it is false, it will go into the else part and it will print will eat later. Okay. This is the best way of representing a real world scenario by using coding. Okay. Just remember that everything in coding is made or designed based on real world scenarios. Okay. So let's move on and look at how you can code using if and if else statement. So now let's exit the presentation and go to Dev C++. So here we are going to create a new C source file. So now I'm going to include stdio.h header file. Then I'm going to declare the void main function. Okay, so now before we go ahead, let's save the file. So now that we have saved the C source file, let's write some code. So first we will declare few variables. So I'm going to declare two variables. I'm going to declare a and give it a value of 10. Then I'm going to declare variable b and give it a value of 20. Okay. So now we are going to start with if statement. So if you remember the syntax for if statement, we first write if, then give a space, then open brackets. Inside this bracket, we provide a condition. So I'm going to give the condition check of a equal to 10. So basically, it will check if a's value is 10 or not. Okay, and then inside this, yeah, I'm going to write a printf statement and I'm going to print a value is 10. Okay, so now let's try to compile. We see that there are zero errors and warnings, so we go ahead and run the program. So you can see that it is printing a value is 10. So you might think this is a normal flow, right? So let's tweak it a little bit. So instead of a equal to 10, I'm going to change it to a equal to 11. Now let's see what's going to happen when we compile and run the program. So you can see that there is no output at all. That is because since this condition is not satisfied, it is skipping this entire code. And because of that, you are seeing a blank output on the screen. Okay. Yeah. So let's move to if else statement. So if you remember, I told you that if else statement is just an extension of if statement. Okay. So first you will always have the if statement in an if else statement. So I'm going to write if, giving space, then I am going to put a condition here. So condition I'm going to put b equal to 10, and I'm going to take this to the next line. Then here I'm going to write a printf statement saying b value is 10 is unknown. Okay, so now I'm going to compile the code and run it. So now you can see that it is giving an output of b values unknown. So if you remember, in if statement, when the condition is not satisfied, nothing special happens, right? It will just skip this part of the code and it will go on executing the other remaining stuff. But for if else statement, whenever the condition is false, it will execute the code inside the else block. Okay, this you should remember, right? So if the condition is true, it will execute the part inside if, and if the condition is false, it will execute the part inside else. Okay, this is the fundamental thing about if else statement. Okay, so let's try something else. So instead of b equal to 10, I'm going to change it to b equal to 20. So you know that p's value is 20, so it will match. So we should see this being displayed on the screen, right? So let's see if it happens or not. I'm going to compile the code and then I'm going to run it. So you can see that it is displaying b values 10, which is this line of code inside the if condition. This is happening because the condition given to if statement is true. Okay, so this is how if else statement works. So it is very simple. Okay, so if you want, what you can do is you can try to get these values dynamically from the user by using scanf, and then you can try passing the value here. So the remaining part will all be the same, just that you can try fetching the values of a and b using scanf statement and see what happens when you give different values. But for our purpose, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to show you how the if and if else statement works by using static values. Okay. So now that you understand how to write code for if and if else statement, let's move on back to the presentation. Thank you everyone for watching my video. If you like, then leave a thumbs up. And if you want to see more videos like this, then please subscribe and share this video with your friends. If you have any doubts, then please leave a comment and I will reply to your comments. Thank you and happy coding.